Jake woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing off the hook. Blinking in confusion, he slapped his hand on the side table, trying to silence the noise, only for the buzzing to get louder. Eventually, he groggily grabbed his phone and squinted at the screen. His eyes widened as a gigantic, glowing message flashed. "Attention Earthling, you have been selected for the Galactic Brides program." "Not again," Jake groaned, rubbing his eyes. He tossed the phone on his bed and rolled over to check the clock. The time was 8:45 a.m. He had a meeting in 2 hours, but this was more important. He grabbed the phone, opened the message, and watched as a booming voice from a robotic alien announcer blared through the speakers. "Humans are now part of the Galactic Brides program. All Earthlings, regardless of status, will be required to participate. Those who fail to comply will be removed." Jake stared at the screen, unblinking. The voice kept going on, detailing the mandatory matchmaking with a race of intergalactic creatures. His stomach sank when they showed pictures of different alien species, all lined up to pick their human mate. Some looked like giant octopuses, others like lizard creatures, and there was one that looked suspiciously like a giant toaster with arms. "Well, shit," Jake muttered, rubbing his face. "That's not how I thought my Thursday morning was going." The message ended with instructions on how to sign up for the program. He hit accept out of sheer confusion and watched as the screen flashed with more information. The system automatically processed his personal details, and then the screen froze. For a moment, Jake thought the whole thing was some kind of joke. The same moment, an official-looking document popped up, confirming his participation. His phone buzzed again. The name flashing on the screen read, "Galactic Brides Matching Service." With a deep sigh, Jake swiped it open. "Jake, you've been matched with Kolara, a high-ranking warlord from the Xylothian species. Please wait for further instructions on the intergalactic transport portal." "Yeah, sure, just send me to the alien bride portal," Jake muttered. "Next thing you know, I'll be getting an email about my intergalactic wedding registry." His phone buzzed yet again, but this time, the message was short. "Ready for your match, human?" He stared at it for a second, wondering if this was some kind of prank. But then he realized there was no point in thinking it was. He was stuck in the system now. It was either follow the program or be removed, whatever that meant. Jake leaned back against his bed and ran his hands over his face, trying to piece together what this all meant. Why the hell would they want Earthlings to marry aliens? And why in the hell did he get matched with her, whoever she was? The next minute, Jake felt a strange sensation, a tickling in the back of his throat that rapidly escalated into full-blown vertigo. Before he could protest, everything around him went black, and the world disappeared. Moments later, he woke up with a thud. The air smelled like burned ozone, and he was sprawled on the floor of a room that seemed to have no walls but an endless expanse of neon lights in the distance. "Great!" Jake groaned, picking himself up and dusting himself off. He could barely see his hands, let alone the exact location he was in. Just as he started to gather his bearings, a bright flash lit up the room. A voice, low and commanding, rang out. "Human!" Jake froze, feeling every hair on his body stand on end. He looked up, and there, in front of him, was Kolara. He could only assume that was her, considering she matched the description. Her size was towering, her figure commanding, her armor gleaming with a sharp, menacing edge. She was a mix of iron and leather, with the most intense gaze Jake had ever seen. Kolara stood tall, her muscles rippling beneath her alien armor, which looked like something out of a war movie. Her face was entirely serious, as if she didn't have a single idea what was happening. Or maybe she just didn't care. Either way, the way she looked at Jake made it seem as though his very existence was beneath her, something she was forced to deal with for the sake of diplomacy. Jake took a deep breath and put on his best smirk, trying to act unaffected by the giant, terrifying alien warlord. He had no idea how long this marriage thing was going to last, but it sure as hell wouldn't be boring. "So, you're my wife?" Jake asked, trying to keep the sarcasm in check. Kolara's response came in the form of a blank stare, her massive hand twitching, as though she was resisting the urge to crush him on the spot. I do not understand this concept. I am not your wife. You will be my mate, for political purposes. Right. Of course. A political mate, Jake said, his voice dripping with mock seriousness. I'm sure there's some really romantic way to bond with you that I don't know about. Like, sending memes or something? Colora's eyes narrowed at the mention of memes. What are memes? Jake froze. You don't know what memes are? No, Colora said, her tone as deadly as her expression. What is this meme? Okay, Jake hesitated, then pulled out his phone, suddenly feeling like an idiot trying to explain humor to an alien overlord. It's like, a thing that's funny, in a visual, cultural way. Like a joke, but in image form. It's a... She cut him off. Enough. Jake gulped. Right. Okay. So, not memes then. How about I just treat you to dinner? Or like, do I need to fight you in an arena or something? Colora crossed her arms, a sly smile curving at her lips. You wish to woo me with Earth gestures? Her voice was oddly playful now, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Jake's nerves spiked. You're not into that sort of thing? She tilted her head, her eyes sparkling with a strange mixture of curiosity and something much darker. I understand Earth males think this is an amusing game. But if you want to keep playing, you must prove you are worthy. Prove I'm worthy? What's that supposed to mean? Jake asked, though he was beginning to realize the stakes were about to get a lot higher than he imagined. Colora stepped closer, her presence imposing. You will see soon enough, human. If you are lucky, I might show you how Xylothians express affection. Jake laughed nervously, swallowing the growing lump in his throat. Sure. Lucky. I love me some intergalactic affection. He stood up a little straighter. If nothing else, he was going to make this the most absurd adventure of his life. But before he could say anything else, Colora flicked a switch, and the lights dimmed, signaling the beginning of something strange, and perhaps a bit terrifying. Jake barely had time to take in the surreal atmosphere before Colora motioned for him to follow her. The corridor ahead of them was lit with an eerie glow, walls that seemed to shift and pulsate in time with the faint hum of alien machinery. The whole place felt like it was alive, and Jake's heart was racing as he tried to keep up with the towering alien warlord. Where exactly are we going? Jake asked, trying to mask his anxiety with sarcasm. He needed to keep his cool, at least until he could figure out what the hell was going on. Colora didn't respond, instead leading him through the labyrinth of corridors until they reached a massive chamber, unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The floor was made of some strange metallic material, smooth yet somehow undulating as if it was breathing. In the center, a large platform rose, its surface glimmering with an unearthly shine. This is where you will prove yourself, Colora finally said, her voice cold and emotionless. Jake swallowed. Prove myself? I thought we were just supposed to get married or something. Colora raised an eyebrow. Marriage? We are not getting married. You are my mate, nothing more. Jake didn't know if he was relieved or disappointed. Right. So, what's the test? Colora gave a faint smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. You will have to prove your strength, your will, and your worthiness. If you cannot meet my standards, you will be removed. Removed? You make it sound so casual, Jake muttered, trying to make light of the situation. Casual? Colora stepped closer, towering over him. You should be honored to have the chance to prove yourself to me. Many beings of your species would give anything for a chance to stand before me. Jake chuckled nervously, running a hand through his hair. I'm sure they would. But I'm starting to think I'm just here for, entertainment value? Colora ignored his attempt at humor and gestured to the platform. Step forward, human. The first challenge awaits. Jake stepped onto the platform with as much bravado as he could muster. The moment his foot touched the surface, the entire room shifted. The floor beneath him seemed to warp, and before he knew it, he was surrounded by a series of glowing barriers that began to hum with energy. What the hell is this? Jake muttered, looking around in confusion. Colara's voice rang out above the noise. You are about to face the trial of Xylothea. Complete it, and I may consider your worth. Fail, and I will have you sent back to Earth, stripped of your dignity. Jake groaned. Great. Nothing like a little pressure. The barriers around him pulsed, and then a series of creatures, alien beasts of varying shapes and sizes, materialized within the glowing walls. They looked like something out of a nightmare, monstrous, scaly, and far larger than anything Jake had ever seen on Earth. Okay, Jake muttered, cracking his knuckles. I guess I should have expected something like this. Bring it on, big guys. Colara watched from the edge of the platform, her arms crossed as if she were observing a particularly amusing insect. Jake squared his shoulders and braced for impact as the first of the creatures lunged toward him. It was a giant, snake-like thing with glowing eyes, its massive fangs gleaming. Jake barely dodged as it lashed out, narrowly avoiding its strike. The creature hissed, rearing back for another attack. Jake, heart pounding, scrambled for something to do. His mind raced, and then it hit him. All right, I don't know what kind of weird alien sorcery this is, he muttered, but I'm going to fight back. He grabbed a chunk of rock that had appeared out of nowhere and hurled it at the creature, striking it in the eye. The beast recoiled, screeching in pain. Jake took the opportunity to dive in and land a punch to its underbelly. The blow wasn't strong enough to kill it, but it definitely knocked the wind out of the creature. It writhed in pain, clearly more confused than hurt. Ha! Take that, you overgrown lizard! Jake shouted, grinning in victory. Colara watched, a slight smirk on her face. Impressive. But that was only the first test. Jake wiped his brow and prepared for the next creature to attack. I'm not done yet, lady. Let's see what else you got. As if on cue, another creature appeared, this one with multiple limbs and a body covered in spikes. It hissed, snapping its jaws at Jake. He barely managed to roll out of the way as it lunged, its claws narrowly missing him. Okay, you're getting a little too creative with your monster design, Jake grumbled, searching for another object to use. His mind was working at full speed now, calculating the best way to take down the creature. In a split-second decision, Jake grabbed another large rock and threw it toward the creature's face. It collided with its nose, disorienting the beast just long enough for Jake to jump on its back. He wrapped his arms around one of its spiked legs, using his body weight to pull it down. The creature screeched and bucked, but Jake held on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the creature collapsed under his strength. Not bad, huh? Jake said, panting as he stood up. His hands were shaking, but there was no time to celebrate. Another challenge was already beginning to take form. Colara's eyes narrowed in amusement, but her tone remained indifferent. It's not enough. You have more to prove. Jake groaned and glanced around. Of course there's more. Why wouldn't there be? As if to answer his question, the final challenge appeared, a giant, armored creature that looked like a cross between a tank and a rhinoceros. It charged toward him, its massive horns aimed directly at Jake. The ground shook as it sprinted, and Jake barely had time to react. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding being flattened. Jesus! Jake yelped, scrambling to his feet. What do you expect me to do with this thing? Colara's voice rang out, her tone cold and detached. You will use your mind, not your strength, to defeat it. Jake's brain kicked into overdrive. He had no chance of overpowering this thing. He needed a strategy. He scanned the area, looking for anything that could help. His eyes locked on a large lever sticking out of the wall near the edge of the platform. Okay, Jake muttered, grinning to himself. It's either this or death by alien rhino. With quick reflexes, Jake sprinted toward the lever, the beast hot on his heels. Just as the creature lunged, he yanked the lever down with all his might. The entire room seemed to groan as the ground beneath the creature shifted, and suddenly, large metal spikes shot up from the floor. The creature, unable to stop in time, charged directly into the trap, impaling itself on the spikes. It screeched in agony, thrashing about until it finally collapsed, defeated. Jake exhaled, panting heavily. Well, that was a little too close for comfort. He turned to Cholera, who had yet to show any sign of emotion. Is that enough? Did I pass? Cholera finally stepped forward, her gaze steady. You have passed, human. But know this, these trials are only a glimpse of what is to come. There is much more to being worthy of me than simply surviving. Jake smirked, wiping sweat from his brow. Oh, I'm sure. But I'm still here, aren't I? Cholera looked him up and down, her expression unreadable. For now. But the real challenge has only just begun. Jake didn't know what to expect next, but at least he was still standing. Jake barely had time to catch his breath before Cholera motioned for him to follow again. Her demeanor had shifted slightly. There was a flicker of something else in her gaze, something less tyrannical, almost intrigued. He wasn't sure if it was because he'd survived the trials, or if she was secretly impressed by his resourcefulness. But at this point, Jake had no time to analyze her. The fact that he was still alive was enough of a victory for him. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same mix of sarcasm, charm, and sheer luck that had gotten him this far. So, Jake started, as he followed Cholera down another set of shifting corridors. What's the next round? You going to throw some fire-breathing spiders at me or? Cholera interrupted him with a soft grunt. You are not here to entertain yourself with idle talk, human. You are here to prove your worthiness. Do not waste my time. Jake rolled his eyes, muttering under his breath. Yeah? I got it. Prove my worth. But seriously, can we skip the murderous part and get to the part where we, I don't know, bond over something normal, like Netflix or ice cream? Cholera's expression didn't change, but the corner of her mouth twitched. You think your Earth customs amuse me? Jake gave her a grin, half leaning against the cold metallic wall. You'd be surprised. Anyway, just waiting for the next test. What are we going to do next? A three-legged race? Cholera's piercing eyes narrowed as if she were trying to decode Jake's absurd humor. If you are so eager to participate in such trivial games, you will not find them here. The next test will require more than simple strength or wit. Oh? What's next? Are you going to make me recite Earth's entire history of pop culture? Because, believe me, I'm ready. I could quote The Office all day. Cholera's lips parted as if to respond, but then she stopped, her eyes flicking to something in the distance. Jake followed her gaze and saw a large circular platform in the center of the chamber, with a glowing outline surrounding it. Step forward, Cholera commanded. Jake hesitated. What, no grand speech? No warning that I'm about to face another nightmare creature? I've seen enough of your kind to know when you're ready for what comes next, Cholera replied, her voice cool. Jake stepped onto the platform. The moment his foot made contact, the floor beneath him shifted, and suddenly, the platform began to glow brighter. He had no idea what was happening, but he didn't have much of a choice. Cholera had a look in her eyes that made him feel like he was about to be put through a whole new set of hoops. Then, without warning, an image flashed on a massive screen in front of him. It was a hologram of a famous Earth celebrity. Jake wasn't sure which one, but he recognized the face instantly. Wait, are you seriously doing this? Jake said, throwing his hands up. You're making me play trivia? Not trivia, Cholera replied. You will answer questions about your species and your planet. Your knowledge of your culture will determine your worthiness as my mate. Jake blinked. So you want me to pass some kind of quiz? On Earth's pop culture? I'm great at this. Cholera's eyes seemed to gleam with interest. We will see. Answer correctly, and you will prove you understand Earth's most important creations. Fail, and you will be removed. Jake snorted. Of course, I'll be removed. It's always a removal with you. The first image appeared again, and the question followed. Who is known as the king of pop on Earth? Jake almost couldn't help the chuckle that escaped his lips. You've got to be kidding me. Michael Jackson. Who doesn't know this? Cholera's face remained stoic, but Jake could sense her curiosity deepening. Correct. Jake raised his eyebrows. Well, color me impressed. But that was easy. What's next? The next question flashed across the screen. Which TV show features a group of 6 friends living in New York City? Seriously? Jake asked with a raised eyebrow. You want me to answer Friends? I thought you were going to test my knowledge of, important things. Colora's tone was almost patronizing. You think this is trivial? No, Jake answered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I think this is a nightmare. But sure, Friends. I mean, who doesn't know that? The hologram beeped again, signaling another correct answer. Colora's expression didn't change, but Jake noticed a subtle shift in her posture. She was more intrigued than ever. The next question popped up. What was the first successful viral meme on Earth? Jake froze for a second. He knew there was no way Colora would understand it, but he had to answer, right? He stared at the question, trying to remember. The Doge meme? Yeah, definitely Doge. The Shiba Inu with the Comic Sans captions. Much wow, very funny. Doge? Colora repeated, clearly not understanding. Explain. Jake rubbed his temples. It's a dog. A Shiba Inu. People posted pictures of it online with random captions. You'd think it was stupid, but it took over the internet. So much so that it even became part of Earth's culture. Colora raised an eyebrow. The internet is that powerful? Jake scratched his head, nodding slowly. You have no idea. The memes are the future. The Doge meme is, the first. I don't know, real viral thing. You can't even imagine how many people made entire careers off memes. Fascinating, Colora said, her gaze sharpening as she processed the information. I will have to learn more. Jake exhaled sharply. So, I passed, right? For now, Colora replied, her voice betraying a slight hint of admiration. But there is more. Jake's heart sank. Of course, there was more. Oh, there's always more. What's next, Colora? A trivia about food memes? Colora didn't answer right away. Instead, she waved her hand, and the holograms around them shifted. New questions appeared, harder ones, but ones Jake had no problem answering. He breezed through them, surprised at how much he actually knew about Earth's quirky culture. Finally, after a series of increasingly absurd questions, which character famously said I am the one who knocks on your planet's drama series Breaking Bad, Jake had proved himself. At least, he thought he had. Colora didn't say anything for a moment, simply standing still with her arms crossed. Jake was starting to feel like a trained monkey doing tricks for her. Is that it? Did I win? Jake asked, impatience creeping into his voice. You passed the test, Colora said, her voice unwavering. But do not mistake this for the final judgment. There is still much you do not understand about our ways. Yeah, no kidding, Jake muttered. But at least I didn't get blasted into space, right? Colora's eyes gleamed with something Jake couldn't quite decipher, but he could tell it wasn't anger. We will see, human. The next challenge will reveal your true potential. Jake didn't know whether he should be terrified or relieved. One thing was for sure, this was far from over. And if Colora's tests were anything to go by, he was going to need more than just memes and pop culture references to survive. Jake was starting to feel like he'd been through every kind of test imaginable, and yet, somehow, Colora was still pushing him forward. He wasn't sure whether to be proud of his survival or absolutely terrified of what else she might have in store for him. Her mood seemed to shift constantly, from distant and commanding to almost amused. It was as if he were nothing more than a puzzle she was trying to figure out, and her intensity was beginning to get under his skin. All right, Colora, Jake said, wiping sweat from his brow. What now? Do I have to dance the Macarena to pass this test, or are you finally going to ask me to do something that doesn't involve monsters or pop culture? Colora's eyes narrowed, the tiniest smirk playing on her lips. You think I would ask you to perform such childish rituals? You are not here to entertain me with your Earth customs. You are here to prove that you can survive as my mate. Jake's throat tightened at the word mate. The more Kolara said it, the more it started to feel real. He had been thrown into a situation that was already completely out of his control, but the idea of actually becoming a part of her world, whether it was by her side or under her rule, was starting to feel both surreal and impossible. He took a deep breath and forced himself to smile. Survive as your mate, huh? Let me guess, there's another trial coming up that'll test whether or not I can stand the sight of intergalactic cooking? Kolara's eyes remained steady, her voice unwavering. You will face a challenge unlike any other. It is time for you to prove your emotional strength. Physical ability is not enough. You must show that you are capable of understanding what it means to exist as my partner. Jake blinked. Wait, so now we're talking about emotions? You're not going to drop a giant beast on me, or… No, Kolara interrupted. This trial requires you to demonstrate your ability to connect. Not just to me, but to the entirety of my species. Great, Jake said dryly, trying to mask his nervousness with humor. So you want me to do some soul-searching now, huh? I'm just supposed to connect with you, your species, and whatever else is out there? I'm a little more of a show-me-the-money type, not a hold-my-hand-and-let's-discuss our feelings kind of guy. Kolara stared at him with an unreadable expression. You will not be given the luxury of avoiding this test. You must confront the reality of what your role will be in this galaxy. A human in my service is more than just a symbol of Earth's submission. You must show me that you understand what it means to be my equal. My partner. All right, Jake said, trying to sound confident despite the sudden weight of her words. So what does that even mean? What's the trial? Without answering, Kolara gestured to a darkened corner of the chamber. Jake followed her lead, still confused, and stepped into the low-light area where a strange, pulsing machine stood. It looked like a cross between an ancient artifact and some high-tech piece of machinery. Cables and lights crisscrossed its surface like a web, and there was a glowing seat in the center. What the hell is this? Jake asked, his curiosity piqued but his apprehension rising. This, Kolara said, is the trial of unity. You will enter the chamber and face a simulation designed to test your bond with me. Fail, and you will be deemed unworthy. Succeed, and we will move forward. Jake gave her an incredulous look. A simulation? What am I, a lab rat? Kolara's gaze softened just slightly, but her voice remained firm. This is not a trivial test. The simulation will link your mind with mine, and we will experience a shared vision. It will show you the truth of what your life will be like if you choose to accept your place by my side. Jake hesitated for a moment, but then something clicked in his mind. Despite all the danger of the test, the sheer absurdity of it all, he still didn't want to be seen as a failure. He had already made it this far. And who knew? Maybe this trial would give him a glimpse of what Kolara was really like, beyond the warlord persona. Well, if this is how I get to know you better, I'm game, Jake said, trying to keep the nervousness out of his voice. He stepped forward, and Kolara gestured for him to sit on the glowing seat. Once he sat down, the machine hummed to life, and the world around him seemed to dissolve into nothingness. The next thing he knew, he was no longer in the chamber with Kolara, but standing in a vast, empty space, a strange mix of alien architecture and surreal landscapes. Where are we? Jake asked, his voice echoing. This is a vision of what could be, Kolara's voice answered, though she wasn't visible. A glimpse of the future, if you choose to stand by me. If you choose to understand. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. It was Kolara, but not the warlord he had come to know. This version of her was softer, more serene, dressed in an elegant gown that shimmered with the same otherworldly light that illuminated the chamber. She walked toward him with an air of quiet confidence, her gaze locked on his. Jake couldn't move, couldn't look away. This version of Kolara seemed like an entirely different person, an alien, sure, but a person with depth, with emotions, with vulnerabilities. I don't understand, Jake murmured, his voice shaking slightly. Is this what you want? For us to live like this? Kolara, or the version of her in the vision, smiled faintly. This is not a future. It is a choice. The future will be what you make of it. Suddenly, the vision shifted. They were no longer in a peaceful world. Now, they stood in the middle of a battlefield. Alien ships rained down from the sky, and explosions erupted around them. Jake could feel the heat of the blasts, hear the sounds of war. But even amidst the chaos, Kolara remained calm, her eyes focused on the horizon as if this was just another day for her. You think this is what I want? She asked, her voice laced with cold certainty. I do what I must to protect my people. I have made hard choices. The weight of this galaxy is on my shoulders. Jake wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but his hand passed through her as if she were a hologram. I don't know if I can do that, if I can handle this, he said, the weight of her words heavy on him. The question is not if you can, Kolara responded. The question is, will you? Before he could answer, the vision flickered and changed again. This time, they were standing together in a quiet room, still alien, still strange, but somehow peaceful. Kolara was sitting at a table, her posture relaxed, but there was something in her eyes that Jake hadn't seen before, vulnerability. I never asked for this, she said quietly, her voice softer now. I never wanted to rule, never wanted to be feared. But I am what the galaxy made me. I need someone who can stand by me, someone who can see past the image, past the warrior. Someone who can accept me as I am. Jake stood frozen, absorbing every word. The image of Kolara sitting there, alone yet not entirely alone, struck him in a way he wasn't prepared for. Was this what she really needed? Was this what he was supposed to offer her? The vision faded, and Jake found himself back in the simulation room, breathing heavily, his mind spinning. Kolara was standing before him, watching him carefully. Well? She asked, her tone unreadable. Jake opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. What had he just seen? Was this the future they could have? Was this a glimpse of what it would be like to stand by her side? To understand her, not as a conqueror, but as a person? He wasn't sure, but he knew one thing: he hadn't failed her yet. I'm still here, he said slowly, meeting her gaze. And I'm still willing to try. If you'll have me. For a long moment, Kolara didn't speak. But then, just as he was about to speak again, she nodded, ever so slightly. You will prove yourself human. But you have passed this test. Jake exhaled, not sure whether to be relieved or terrified. Either way, he knew one thing for certain: this was far from over.